Thanks for joining us. The jury at a high-profile murder trial continue to deliberate at this hour. Umar Zamir is accused of intentionally running over a Toronto police officer and killing him. The accountant and father of two testified in his own defense, saying he thought his family was being attacked by criminals. You're looking live at the courthouse on University Avenue in downtown Toronto. Lots of people have been watching this story closely, waiting to hear from the jury, who remain behind closed doors inside that building trying to reach a verdict. We'll hear from a criminal defense lawyer in moments. But first, here's Philip Lee Shannock with standout moments from the case.
Till this month-long trial. Just that a veteran Toronto police officer, Detective Constable Jeffrey Northrup, was killed in the line of duty. Police say he was struck by a vehicle, the driver charged with first-degree murder. Buried with full honors, politicians called him a hero and called for justice in what was described as an intentional, deliberate act. Killing an on-duty police officer calls for an automatic first-degree murder charge.
I commend you for your strength and poise in the face of this unbearable tragedy.
But the evidence at trial painted a more complicated picture. The jury heard Zamir was leaving Canada Day celebrations after midnight with his pregnant wife and 2-year-old son. That Northrup and other officers who approached his car were in plain clothes and began banging on the car's windows. The officers who testified say they were investigating a stabbing and said that they had identified themselves as police. Zamir, who testified in his own defense, said he didn't know Northrup was a police officer and thought they were being attacked and was making a panicked attempt to get away. Officers testified that Zamir ran Northrup down head-on, but two experts, including one testifying for the Crown, said Northrup was struck by Zamir's car while backing up. This criminal lawyer who attended the closing arguments says the fact that Zamir ran over Northrup is not in dispute.
In order to prove that this was a first-degree murder, the Crown Attorney would have to establish that Officer Northrup was acting as a police officer, had identified himself as a police officer, and that Mr. Zamir, knowing that he was a police officer, really ran him over intentionally.
Brown says the jury could find Zamir guilty of a lesser charge of manslaughter if they find he operated his car in a dangerous way and intentionally hit Northrup. Or, as the defense has argued, after reviewing surveillance footage, accident reconstruction evidence, and testimony from all the witnesses, they could decide Zamir acted in self-defense and acquit him of all charges and find that Northrup's death was a tragic accident. Philip Lee Shannock, CBC News, Toronto.
We are going to be watching this story closely. As we said, we are waiting to hear from the jury, who continues to deliberate this evening. Coming up, we'll have more from a criminal defense lawyer who's been tracking this case. We've had her on as a guest before. That's coming up in a few minutes. Well, turning to the other big story tonight, the pressure is on. Toronto Maple Leafs facing longtime rivals, the Boston Bruins, for Game 1 of the NHL playoffs. Patrick Swadden is standing by with fans at Maple Leaf Square. Patrick, how are the fans feeling about the game tonight? I don't think Patrick can hear me, so we're going to keep moving right along. And we're going to talk about the weather next. Matt Hamill is joining us from the Weather Network. You know, there's a big party tonight for the Leafs outside. The game is in Boston, but the game is going to be on the screen, so a lot of fans are going to be gathering for that. You know, we had a bit of rain when I was driving in, a bit of snow too, so I'm just waiting to hear. Do we have the weather? We don't have the weather, so I'm going to hear from my producers to tell you where we're going next. Switching gears now, a number of cities and towns across the province will soon have a new system for dispatching emergency response workers. Tyler Cheese breaks it all down for us.
MPDS is a tool that's going to make sure you get the right resource at the right time with the right priority.
Under the Medical Priority Dispatch System, 911 dispatchers are better able to assess how medically serious a call is. Each situation is then ranked into one of 5 color-coded tiers. The previous system only had 2 tiers with about 77% of calls categorized as high priority. But with MPDS, the highest priority calls dropped to around 2%.
It better utilizes the Ontarians' resources, the dollars that are spent on ambulance responses, make sure that they're spent appropriately, and it also preserves ambulance resources for the most acute calls in a very systematic and medically driven process.
A spokesperson for Ontario's Ministry of Health calls the upgrade the biggest change to pre-hospital care in the last 2 decades. The province has been slowly rolling out the new system in different municipalities, including Mississauga, Kenora, Thunder Bay, and most recently, Ottawa.
We are excited to bring MPDS to Ottawa, knowing it will improve our service delivery to the community.
Most other provinces in Canada use the system, and it's been in place in Toronto since 1992 and the Niagara region since 2007. The Ontario Association of Paramedic Chiefs says the local rollout has been pretty smooth so far. Renfrew County and Kingston are next in line to make the switch. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Leafs fans, are you ready? Game 1 going tonight. The Buds taking on longtime rival, the Boston Bruins. Our Patrick Swadden is taking it all in tonight. Counting down to puck drop with the fans at Maple Leaf Square. Patrick, how are the fans feeling tonight?
Well, Shannon, I'm standing here. I can barely hear myself think. There's so much energy. The hype is alive here. Of course, the Toronto Maple Leafs are matched up against the Boston Bruins, a team that has historically not been too kind at all to the Maple Leafs. Of course, we are going to find out how that's all going to work out. But right now, we're going to bring in some fans here. I've got Dakota. Dakota, how are you feeling about tonight's matchup?
I'm feeling real good. I think the Leafs got a much stronger team. They're a lot faster, got more skill up forward, and I think they can come out on top on the Bruins in this series.
Any idea who's going to open the scoring for us tonight?
I got to go with Matthews. He's a natural goal scorer. I think he's going to get the first one for the boys.
So, Shannon, we're just a couple hours away from puck drop. Of course, the Toronto Leafs are going to face an uphill battle in these playoffs.
Leafs fans have heard this story before. In fact, this will be the 8th straight year it's told. A great team with a talented core charges into the playoffs, hope reborn in Toronto. But the ending has become all too familiar for fans. An early Leafs exit, disappointment, leads to another year of waiting.
And it's frustrating for me for sure because we never really had success. But, hopefully it's something different this year.
Last year, the Leafs made the second round for the first time in nearly 2 decades, finally downing the Tampa Bay Lightning in an overtime nail-biter.
It was just relieving almost and exciting to see what came next.
McKesson scores! It's a series winner!
But what came next? Another Florida foe, the Panthers. They sent the Buds home in 5.
It's obviously mental. Like, they've had the lineup to go all the way for the last at least 4 years. I mean, it's a tough place to play in. Like, it's one of the hottest hockey markets in the world, if not the hottest.
But with adversity comes strength. The question is, will it be enough?
We just gotta, play a strong game defensively, which isn't really our game, but you gotta play strong on the board, strong on the other team's tough players. And of course, we got to somehow beat that Marchand guy. What a rat he is.
Our schedule's been tight here, but you want to just drop the puck and get going. That's, it's the most exciting time of the year.
The Leafs are in good shape, and a gifted core, Nylander, Marner, Riley, and Tavares, remains intact. Austin Matthews finished the season with a league-best 69 goals, taking home the Rocket Richard Trophy. But the team finished 3rd in the Atlantic, 7 points back from a perennial rival, the Boston Bruins, a division matchup that's left the Buds stumped on more than one occasion.
History repeats itself. The Boston Bruins beat the Toronto Maple Leafs in Game 7.
Now, of course, Shannon, the Maple Leafs are trying to turn the page on this rivalry with the Boston Bruins. Of course, it was the Bruins that eliminated the Toronto Maple Leafs twice in a row in 2018 in 7 games, and then they enjoyed that doing that so much they did it again the next year, also in 7 games. Many of the Toronto Maple Leafs fans still have not gotten over the bitter memory of when the Bruins came storming back from a 3-goal deficit in 2013 and eliminated the Maple Leafs. Now, we will find out if the Maple Leafs get a jump on Boston tonight in Game 1 when the puck drops at 8 p.m. tonight. That's going to be right here on CBC Toronto. Shannon, you don't even have to change the channel.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Have fun there. Go Leafs, go. Ottawa's transit agency painting a grim long-term financial picture, sparking fears of a public transit death spiral. Elise Gura takes a look at some potential solutions that could help.
You may have heard that OC Transpo's books aren't looking so good. There's a big hole. For Ottawa's transit agency, every month so far this year, it's been $1 million short on projected revenue for fares. It's definitely bad news. But it's also no surprise, with the city recently releasing long-term financials that were much worse than even the mayor expected. So what's the solution? Well, the simplest answer is raising fares or reducing service, a recipe for what experts call a death spiral. To understand how to climb out, we need to know how we got in this mess, which means going back to a more optimistic time when the East-West rail line had just opened. Despite some obvious launch issues, ridership was going up. Then came the COVID-19 pandemic and its aftermath. Private companies have allowed more remote work, and hybrid work arrangements at the federal government have destabilized OC Transpo's core customer, the daily commuter. Plus, there's the riders who say they will never come back because of the complex issues that the LRT is still dealing with.
We know that 100% of our customers will not come back. So this is a fact now. I think it's clear.
This means OC Transpo really has to rethink its business model so it can bring back some of those lost riders. That could mean including new, better service, something like a on-demand bus service, or the launch of the Trillium extension.
The city can also encourage more people to live near major transit corridors. Basically, bring new riders as close to the system as possible. But that takes time.
As anyone trying to rent or buy in those areas will tell you, there simply aren't enough places to live. And for the most staunch transit users, they've already been priced out of downtown. So what's the quicker fix? Well, if you don't want to lose riders, how about lowering or even eliminating fares? It certainly will get attention, and cities have tried to do this, largely by relying on COVID relief money, monies that have mostly dried up.
Now, there could be a way to target fare reductions. How about riding the Trillium line for free so people can get back into the habit whenever that opens?
A lot of those ideas require spending money in order to make it back, because less funding leads to less service, leads to fewer people paying fares.
We do need support from the provincial and federal levels of government for operating funds.
Oh, right, the province. I mean, they already provide part of the operating budget for Toronto's transit service, saying that the TTC also provides some regional service. Unfortunately, when Premier Doug Ford came to town to announce the new deal with Ottawa, looks like we're not getting the TDOT treatment.
There is hope coming from Parliament Hill. The Liberals have promised permanent funding to run transit, but the latest budget has cities waiting until 2026.
Well, there were some things that we were hoping for. We were hoping for more transit funding, maybe accelerating some of the transit funding that's planned for future years.
So if you're worried about raising fares because it'll scare off riders, then who pays? Maybe it'll be developers, or even you.
The city says it's considering raising levies against property owners,
even those who never set foot on a bus or a train.
In Montreal, there's a $59 vehicle registration tax that goes to fund transit. Gatineau is considering a similar fee that could go up to $90 per vehicle to deal with their cash crunch.
Fare or no fare? someone's going to have to pay for transit to get better.
Returning to our top story, the trial of Umar Zamir. The jury is still trying to reach a verdict right now as we speak. Joining me now is criminal defense lawyer Lydia Riva. Like many of us, she's been following the case closely. Thanks for being here with us tonight, Lydia.
Thank you, Shannon.
So we know the jury started deliberations Thursday evening. Here we are Saturday evening. Are you surprised there's still no verdict?
In my opinion, this is a difficult case for the Crown. The Crown's three main witnesses, police officers, gave evidence that contradicted the evidence of the Crown's own accident reconstructionist. I was also in the courtroom when Mr. Zamir testified, and he gave very compelling, convincing evidence. So in that sense, I am surprised. However, the law in this case is quite complicated. The jury was asked to consider whether or not Mr. Zamir was guilty of first-degree murder. If they find the Crown hasn't proven that, then they have to go to second-degree murder. And then if the Crown hasn't proven second-degree murder, the jury has then been asked to consider whether or not the Crown has proven unlawful act manslaughter in the context of dangerous driving. And that is very complicated law. So in that sense, I'm not surprised that it's taking a while, because the law is complicated. The jury has to consider the law and all in the context of the facts of this case.
Yeah, we were talking earlier. You said the jury was given something like 150 pages of instruction that they would then be going through. Now, we know today the jury did ask the judge a question around self-defense and manslaughter. Can you help us unpack that a little bit and what sort of insight that gives you on where the jury may be?
Yes, so the jury asked the judge to answer a question about self-defense in the context of manslaughter, not in the context of second-degree murder. The judge had already told the jury that self-defense is not available for first-degree murder. The question was whether or not they could consider other justifications for manslaughter other than just simply self-defense. And the judge explained to them there could be other justifications. She also reminded the jury that the Crown must disprove self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. Mr. Zamir does not have to prove he acted in self-defense. It's the Crown's burden to disprove self-defense. So she explained that to the jury, and that might be some indication that the jury has moved on from murder and is now considering manslaughter.
As you said, there is just so many complexities to this case. So as the wait continues tonight, you know, you've been doing this a long time, 2 decades. The jury can technically deliberate until about 9 p.m. tonight, I think. How long do you think this could go?
Well, the jury can deliberate, Shannon, as long as it takes for them to come to a unanimous verdict. They do not have to be unanimous on their reasons, but they do have to come to a unanimous verdict. And in Canada, there's secrecy around jury deliberations, so we don't have a lot of data about what happens in the jury room, but no doubt they're having a lot of discussion, and they are going to come to a verdict at some point. We just don't know when.
Okay, thank you so much, Lydia. We really appreciate your insight tonight.
Thank you, Shannon. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
That's Lydia Riva. She's a criminal defense lawyer in Toronto. Now, as soon as a verdict is reached, you know we will be posting that breaking news on our website. You can head to cbcnews.ca. Some spring cleaning taking place this weekend right across the province, including a one-day blitz raising awareness about cigarette litter and its lasting impact.
Cigarette butts are very toxic. They're made of microplastics. They don't belong in the environment. And if they do end up in the environment, we end up drinking water that's contaminated with those toxins and those microplastics. So we want to keep that out of the environment.
The event is part of a month-long blitz taking place during Earth Month and is also part of 11 other cleanups happening across Canada. So far, volunteers have collected more than 200,000 cigarette butts since April 1st. It's that time of year again. The beautiful cherry blossoms are out in many parks. The Japanese sakura trees are in full bloom. There is a very limited window to take in the beauty, just 4 to 10 days, which some say makes the experience even more special.
4 to 5 months that we are in the houses, like there's snow and windy outside, so that's why.
Spring is coming, summer is coming, and I enjoy my life.
I think it's something really rare that you don't really have, maybe in other cities.
It's so pretty. I've never seen this before because in India it's not a common tree.
To help manage all the visitors at High Park, there will be restricted access to cars starting on Monday for the duration of peak bloom. Matt Hamill joining us tonight from the Weather Network. And Matt, I'm hearing there could be the peak bloom facing a little bit of jeopardy because of, dare I say, frost?
Yeah, right now, a lot of these cherry blossoms are in stage 5 of their development. That's when they're most sensitive to weather, potentially having an impact and hindering the full expression of those beautiful blooms. So we'll notice this evening it's quite chilly for those Leafs fans who are outdoors at Maple Leaf Square. Overnight, we're going to be at risk of frost conditions, a low of 1 degree for the city of Toronto. And as I mentioned, right now we have word from the High Park Nature Center that we're in stage 5 with the lion's share of these blossoms. So with Monday being the projected peak, there is that danger that this type of cold we're seeing even into tomorrow night, heading into our Monday morning, that it could sort of hinder. Now we'll be watching closely if the temperatures will have that kind of impact. And when we take a look over the past few years, when the peak blossoms were for High Park specifically, we're a little bit scattered. But yes, there certainly we'll be watching closely to see if the cold has that impact. And we can look back to April 2008, where we got off to a chilly start to April, but it was a couple of frosty days later in the month where those overnight lows were dipping below the freezing mark. That really had a negative impact on just, again, the full expression of these cherry blossoms. So that's something we'll be watching, and fingers crossed that the cold weather won't have too much of an impact on that gorgeous display in High Park. We know other parts of the city have already seen their cherry blossoms in full peak bloom. Taking a look at our Sunday, not a bad day. We'll be warming up to double digits. That's still cooler than seasonal, but mostly sunny skies will kind of soften that blow, and still a bit windy on our Sunday as well. Now, taking a look at our 7-day forecast, we'll see temperatures are just still nothing to really jump for joy about. Not too bad on Tuesday, where we could see some showers, but a couple days this week where the daytime highs are still in single digits. So maybe the last few days of April and the beginning of May will finally bring us those nicer temperatures. Now, if it's felt like a rainy month, well, in fact, at YYZ measurement station for the city of Toronto, it's the 7th rainiest April on record, and we're about 20 to 25 millimeters away from this being the rainiest April ever recorded for the city of Toronto. Now, taking a look over the next few days, it looks like Tuesday could contribute a few more millimeters, so maybe we're within striking distance of this being the wettest April we've seen on record. Now, here's a look at our nice Sunday, as we're going to be seeing those mostly sunny skies. We have some snow and some rainfall in more central parts of Ontario and into Quebec, but should be a moisture-free day for our Sunday.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Fingers crossed for all the cherry blossom trees, and fingers crossed for our Maple Leafs tonight. Game getting underway at 8 o'clock. We'll all be watching. Have a great night. We'll see you again soon.